Okay, so I have a question for you before we start today.
Sure. What's on your mind?
Is there something in your home that you know you don't need? Something you haven't used in years, and yet you just cannot bring yourself to get rid of it?
Oh, that is a very specific and very real feeling you're describing.
Right? So, what is yours? Tell me.
You go first. I want to hear yours before I share mine.
Okay, so I have this sweater. A wool sweater, cream-colored, thick, kind of old-fashioned looking. And it has moth holes in it. Real holes. Multiple holes.
It sounds pretty well past its prime.
It is way past its prime. You cannot wear it. You cannot fix it. It is objectively done as a sweater. It is finished. And yet, every single time I go through my closet, I pick it up, I look at it, I think, okay, this time it's going. And then I fold it very carefully and put it right back on the shelf.
How long has this been going on?
At least 6 years. Maybe more. I've honestly lost count.
6 years of rescuing the same moth-eaten sweater from the donation box.
Every single time, without fail.
Can I ask, where did the sweater come from?
It was my grandmother's. She gave it to me. Actually, it wasn't even a formal gift. I basically just took it. One visit, she was wearing something similar. I said I loved it. She said, take this one. I have others. So I did.
When did she pass?
A few years after that. So I've had the sweater longer than she's been gone.
And that's part of why you can't throw it away.
I mean, yes and no. I know she's not in the sweater. She's in my memories, in what she taught me, in how I see certain things. But every time I look at that sweater, it reminds me of her hands. It reminds me of her kitchen, what it smelled like, how safe I felt there. It's like a doorway back to all of that. And I just can't close it.
I don't think you're being irrational at all.
You don't? Because I tell myself I am. Literally every time.
No. I think you're being very human, which is something different. Because here's what came to mind the moment you started talking. I have a box in my garage. My father's tools.
Oh, I love that. That sounds like such a meaningful thing to have.
Some of those tools go back to when he was a young man, before I was born, and there are tools in there that I genuinely have no idea how to use.
Wait, really? Like what?
There's this one thing, wooden handle, some kind of metal part attached to it. I have looked at it many times. I still don't know what it does.
And you've had it for years anyway.
I've had it for years, and I could never get rid of it. It's not even something I think seriously about. It's just not an option.
Why do you think that is?
That's actually what I've been trying to figure out. It's not just that it belonged to my dad. It's something more specific. It's that it belonged to the version of him I never fully knew. That tool belongs to the young man who built things, who worked with his hands before he was a husband, a father, someone with responsibilities and worries.
Oh, that's a really beautiful way to put it.
When I hold on to those tools, I think I'm reaching for that version of him, trying to know him in a way I never actually got the chance to.
Okay. You just completely changed how I think about my sweater. Because it's not just the object. It's not even just the person. It's about a version of a relationship at a specific moment in time.
Exactly. When you took that sweater from your grandmother, you were a certain version of yourself. She was a certain version of herself. The sweater holds that specific moment in time. Not just her, that whole moment.
And the version of me who was her granddaughter in exactly that way.
And when you imagine releasing the sweater, You're not just releasing the object, you're releasing your last physical connection to that whole version of things.
Which is a lot to ask a garbage bag to contain.
Way too much. It has sentimental value that goes so far beyond what the object is worth.
You know, I always thought that phrase, "it has sentimental value," was kind of a polite excuse. For people who have trouble letting go,
I think it gets dismissed too easily. Sentiment isn't a small thing.
no. It's doing very heavy lifting in our lives. Very heavy lifting.
So let me ask you something. Is it only the emotionally heavy objects we hold on to? Or is there a whole other category of things we keep for completely different reasons?
Oh, there absolutely is. And this is where things get a little bit absurd. Can I tell you the most embarrassing thing I've kept?
Please, yes, tell me everything.
A receipt from a meal I had in 2018.
A receipt?
$11.40. A lunch receipt, still in my drawer right now.
Why?
I have absolutely no idea. I found it during a move. I thought, trash. And then it went directly into the drawer of the new apartment.
A new home. A new chapter. The same $11 receipt.
It's been 3 years in that apartment now.
That is the human condition summarized in one single anecdote.
I also have hotel key cards. A lot of them.
Oh, I think a lot of people have those.
Every hotel I stay at, the key card somehow ends up in my bag. Then the bag, then a drawer. I have dozens. Completely useless after checkout.
I have cables. An entire box of cables I cannot identify.
The mystery cable box. Every single household has one.
40 cables. I cannot tell you what a single one of them connects to.
But you're never throwing them away.
Because what if I need one someday?
What if I need it someday? The most powerful phrase in the history of clutter.
It applies to everything. Old jeans. Expired coupons. Instruction manuals for things you no longer own.
I have jeans that have not fit me in years. But someday.
Someday. And that someday feels real enough to justify keeping them.
So we've got two very different categories here, I think.
The emotionally loaded ones, the sweater, the tools, where we're holding on to a relationship or a version of ourselves in that relationship.
And then the what-if objects, the hopeful accumulators.
And I think those two categories actually have more in common than we'd expect.
How so?
Both represent something we're not quite ready to close. With the emotional objects, we're not ready to close that chapter of that relationship.
And with the practical ones, we're not ready to close the version of ourselves who might someday need that cable or fit into those jeans.
So we're all, in our different ways, holding on to possibilities.
Possibilities and histories. Both directions at the same time.
Okay, so here is the real question underneath all of this. Do we actually have to let go of these things? Is that always the goal?
So there's this whole movement around decluttering and tidying up. And the core idea is keep only what brings you joy. Get rid of everything else.
Streamline. Simplify. Live lighter.
And I have really complicated feelings about that framework.
Why?
Because what if something doesn't bring you joy, but it brings you something else? My grandmother's sweater doesn't bring me joy. It brings me grief. It brings me love and longing and sadness and something that feels like closeness to her. And I don't think those things are less valid than joy. Not at all.
No. Those things might actually be more important than joy in some situations.
And if the only test is, does it spark joy? The sweater fails every single time. But it is not something I'm willing to part with.
So the test itself might be skipping something important.
I think it skips the grief. It skips the complexity. It assumes that the goal of the things around you is to make you feel good.
But grief is not the enemy of a well-lived life.
No, it's evidence of a life that loved things and lost them. That's not nothing.
Okay, so what's a different way to think about this whole question of letting go?
Well, there's an approach I find much more interesting than the joy test. Before you decide whether to keep or release something, you first take a moment to acknowledge what that object did for you. What role did it play? What did it carry for you while it was in your life?
Like a small recognition ceremony.
Kind of. And you're not pretending the object has feelings. You're giving your own feelings a proper place to exist. Officially.
That's psychologically very sound. Because the reason letting go is hard isn't that we're bad at it or weak. It's that we try to skip the emotional step and jump straight to the practical one.
I don't need this. Therefore, out it goes. No processing. Just the action.
But the emotional part doesn't disappear when you skip it. It stays in the object and in you, unresolved.
So the ceremony isn't really about the object at all. It's about making space for your feelings about it.
And once you've done that, truly done that, sometimes you find you can let it go. And sometimes you find you still need it here.
And there's no shame in either outcome.
None at all. It's not failure. It's honest self-knowledge.
Knowing yourself well enough to say, this is not the time. Not yet.
Not yet is very different from never, and both are completely valid.
Can I ask you something? There are people who seem to have no problem with all of this. They move, they declutter, they donate bags and bags of stuff, and they feel lighter.
I know people like that. And honestly, I've admired that ability.
Do you think they're missing something, or do they just process things differently?
My sense is some of them genuinely live more in the present moment. They don't need a physical anchor for a memory. The memory lives fully inside them.
That's actually a really healthy way to be. I mean that.
It really is. I'm not saying they're missing something important.
Neither am I. I just know that's not how memory works for me. For me, the object is part of how the memory stays alive.
The physical acts as an anchor for the emotional.
Without the sweater, I don't lose my grandmother. She'll always be with me. But I might lose a certain texture of the memory, a certain realness.
Which is why when we do eventually let something go, it needs to be our choice. Not someone else's timeline. Not a trend. Not a book we read last month.
It's our readiness. And ready is something that cannot be scheduled in advance.
If it takes 6 years,
then it takes 6 years. The sweater will wait. It is absolutely fine with that.
So here's where I want to land on all of this. There's a lot of genuine value in the decluttering movement. Living lighter is real.
Totally. I'm not here to tell anyone to keep everything they've ever owned.
But the narrative sometimes swings too far in one direction. It can make holding on to things feel like a character flaw, like a weakness.
Like if you can't let go, something must be wrong with you.
And I just don't think that's true.
Because sometimes the things we can't let go of are the most honest map we have of who we are and what we've actually lived.
A moth-eaten sweater. A box of mysterious tools.
A receipt from 2018. A collection of hotel key cards that go nowhere.
It's just stuff. On the surface, that's all it is.
But it means something. Every single piece of it means something.
And maybe the goal isn't to have less stuff. Maybe the goal is to know why your stuff is there.
That's the shift. From keeping things without ever thinking about it, to keeping things because you understand what they mean to you.
If you've actually looked at something and asked yourself what it's doing there, and it's still there, that's not clutter. That's a conscious choice.
And choices about what matters to us, those are worth making deliberately. So if there's something in your closet, your drawer, a box somewhere in storage, that you've been meaning to deal with for a long, long time, maybe go look at it today. Not to throw it away, necessarily. Just to actually see it. And ask it, why are you still here?
Because the answer might surprise you in a really good way.
In a really good way. All right, before we go...
Right. So today, we kept coming back to this one phrase, I can't bring myself to...
As in, I know I should throw it away, but I just can't bring myself to.
It describes that gap between what you know you should do and what you're emotionally able to do right now in this moment.
I should apologize. I just can't bring myself to pick up the phone yet.
I know I need to have that conversation. I just can't bring myself to start it.
It's honest. It doesn't pretend the feelings aren't real. It doesn't dismiss them.
And there's something important in being able to name it that way. When you can say, I can't bring myself to, you're already a little closer to understanding what's actually holding you.
Which might just be the beginning of something moving.
Take care of yourselves.
We'll see you next time.